I'm going to set the table, if it's okay, Cleo, with, so
Yeah.
what brought, this is a conversation that's been happening, as Jaynie said, often and everywhere. And, as I'm a person who's raising two Gen Zers and hopefully preparing them to, as they finish college, to launch into the professional workforce. I know what the differences are between my mindset as an employer and the two young ladies in my house that are looking for employment. But for the first time, I've actually now seen a poll and some survey results that have come out. September 24th, there was a Wall Street Journal essay published by an author named Susie Welch, who's also runs the most popular course at NYU, which is the book title is called Becoming You, but the course is really on preparing Gen Z for the workforce. And then she was a guest on a broader conversation October 6th on CNN that Michael Smerconic did on the same subject. So when I say, is Gen Z unemployable? I don't really think that's the case, but here's what the facts now bear. The survey NYU did, 45,000 Gen Z young professionals were interviewed. 2,500 hiring managers were interviewed. And in a nutshell, the hire managers' top three values that they are seeking in new hires is number one, achievement, number two, learning, and a desire to learn, and three, a strong desire to work. Overwhelmingly, those were the top three of the 2,500 hiring managers surveyed. Only 2% of the 45,000 Gen Zers that were surveyed identified with those values. Their top three in this order was number one, self-care, number two, authenticity, and number three was the desire to help others. So I think what I found really concerning, if that's the right word, that's a 98% disconnect rate with this huge population. And there's really great data. This isn't, a poll group of 100 people. There's a lot of people. And so I thought we could unpack a conversation about that mismatch. And really, I think Jaynie would agree, or let me ask you, Jay, do you agree? The rap on Gen Z as a workforce is they're ill-prepared or they're unwilling to adapt. According to the survey, 1 in 6 bosses express a reluctance to hire new or recent graduates because of this disconnect. And 75% of employers that have hired Gen Zers claim that they're unsatisfactory because their expectations tend to lean in these other ways. What say you, Jen? Is this consistent with what you hear when you're talking to employers, Jane?
It is what I hear from employers in terms of the challenges they're facing when they bring in new Gen Z employees. But I think it's a little bit unfair to say that they're unemployable or even unprepared, because I don't know that training, there's really been a runway or something to support what they need to be prepared once they show up for day one, right?
Does that mean, I'm sorry to interrupt, does that mean schools are failing them in preparing them, do you think?
I think it's a blend, honestly. I think there is not as much practical experience moving into the workplace or transitioning from, higher education into the workplace or whatever training program that may be, depending on position. Also, coming into the workplace, I don't know if we have kept up with the digital fluency of this generation, because as we noted coming in, they definitely have that aptitude, and that experience comes really second nature to them. I don't think that maybe we've kept up in that way in providing kind of a foundation for them. But I think these things are solvable, especially in our industry.
You bring up some great points, because when we wrap up here a little bit, I thought we could maybe run through what are the suggestions we might have for both the young employees and the employers about how to close that gap and integrate. But to your point about are they prepared? One of the things Professor Welch was talking about was in her class, which is now the most popular business course at NYU. She said, the subjects of her courses are like titled Purpose and Flourishing. And she said, we're now talking to them about basic workplace etiquette, and including things like how to accept a meeting request from a colleague or a coworker, or really how to prepare for a lunch with a senior director. These are things I don't know that anybody prepared me formally for that. I don't even know when I figured it out. I kind of do remember in my 20s when I worked, in the financial district and the Boston Stock Exchange, they were morning breakfasts and role playing with some of the senior VPs as they were preparing, those young impressionable minds like us worked in the prospectus literature stuffing department. Occasionally we were on the phones. So, and I think I just shut up and listened is more what it was. Or you looked at people that were more well-known and sort of mirrored whatever they did. I do know that there is a protocol and an etiquette if I were preparing young people. And I like the idea that schools might be talking about those kinds of things, amongst other things. So I don't know if you're aware of, and maybe that's how we help close the gap, Jaynie, is should employers be prepared to, in the onboarding, don't assume some of those skills exist. Maybe we need to think about whether it's through mentors or just formal structured, weekly sessions, helping that group integrate to professional life. Does that make sense?
It does. And again, I think that there is a blend here of creating a mentorship program, of creating that pathway. Setting an expectation is also something that I think would be helpful to Gen Z coming in the door, right? They really like to feel prepared. They like to feel confident, and building that foundation of what to expect, knowing that this is a person stepping into one of their first professional roles, and building that structure and that foundation. And I think that would be very helpful to them. I also, thinking back, to my early days as a professional, and even before that, there were things built into curriculum, even at a high school level, that were different than I think what this generation has experienced in an educational setting.
Yeah.
So what we would not even really necessarily think twice about, because it was such a part of curriculum, it was such a part of instruction and even socialization for our generation, right? I don't think that the same layers were present for Gen Z. And so that support is needed going into the workplace. I love that there is a class that is addressing this before these young professionals are stepping into that first position. I think that's huge and a smart layer to the curriculum.